somebody having, the other side having received the message in the time band, but you don't think it's in the time band. That can create a litigation hell.
Sure. Yeah. The point is, if you and the recipient of a message have your computer set to different times, and yours is set correctly and theirs isn't, their record can show that the email was received in the time of interest, where yours does not. Right? And certainly some more investigation would have to be done to figure out who's got the correct time. Thank you. Any other questions about time zones and GMT? I think this is a really important point. Okay. A key part of this whole process is what we call processing, right? It's a very ambiguous term that's really used to mean the extraction of metadata to the deepest level that you can get at it, to as many levels deep in a file or folder structure that you can achieve it. During processing, we try to glean additional information about the data set or the record or the documents that are not immediately available to the naked eye if you're just reading it, or available to an indexing engine that's just looking at the face of the document or the content of the document. And metadata, I'm sure you're mostly familiar with it. It's just data about data, the create dates, the mod dates, the access dates, the date something was printed. You have file system metadata. You have software that embeds metadata when creating a document, things like Office and Word. You can have metadata in a Word document that says the author is this. Most often it's incorrect because it's the organization that registered the software, not the person who created the document. So, yeah, many different aspects to this. But processing is something that we do after the data is collected, and we've whittled it down as much as we can during the identification and initial search phases to get at the details or the nuances inside the data set. And processing takes us from an unstructured data set to a structured data set, or attempts to flatten everything out and make it so you can sort it, analyze it, identify duplicates using some hashing mechanism like ND5 or SHA, perhaps DNIST, or that is to suppress system files. So your audience is not looking at INI files or DLL files or executables. So they're only looking at things that are potentially of interest. Okay? And most commonly, the most searchable data set is created as a result of the processing phase. And that's really where we're going to have the greatest success in terms of searching and analyzing and finding what we're looking for. And that, of course, is reliant upon having done a good collection and knowing that the data that you're looking for is likely there to be.
Is there much of a request for looking at the code, actual code?
Good question. The question is are there requests to look at the actual source code? And the answer to that is yes. We do have some instances where it's an IP issue, intellectual property issue, and someone is assessing and analyzing the source code of an application or some technology, and they'll need access to the nuts and bolts of how an application runs. And that actually creates some issues, right? Because that, if you don't know that ahead of time, that most likely will be DNISTed. It will be identified as some system file or source code, or it might even be detected as a potential virus that wants to take some action on the file system and will be suppressed. So that we have to take special precautions for that and know that ahead of time. And that data very often has to be shared with some expert that the corporation is employing to prove their point, and the opposition is employing an expert to disprove the other expert's point. So you need to find a way to share that data or produce it, as we've stated, in a way that's meaningful to them, but that can still fit in this life cycle, right? In this framework, in this notion that everything should be a document that can be produced or reviewed or searched. Right? We have some instances where everything boils down to a numbered object. In litigation, it's a base number. We have instances where someone will just receive a piece of media, and the media itself will have just one number identifying the entire media, and that media will represent that intellectual property or that code or the elements of that technology that are at odds, that are of interest, and that's how we approach that. Good question. Okay. Again, as a result of processing, we have the option to do other things to the data that can make it more searchable. Okay? We can identify things that aren't searchable after processing, things that don't yield text. We can identify them and decide, can we do anything to these files to create text that we can then index? And that process is typical, right? We create an electronic paper image of a document, and then we run OCR, optical character recognition, that attempts to retype or recreate that document just from having a snapshot of the document. Okay? And not everything's perfect. OCR is not perfect. The better quality document you have, the better the OCR is going to become. But even that is an element that's involved in our day-to-day that we need to keep in mind. Because even though you run OCR, everything on the page is going to be understood. So if you have letters touching each other or really bold fonts and underlines, not every letter is going to be captured. So you need to take that into account in your search method. Okay? But again, processing will flatten out the data and allow you to create a database that you can search, sort, analyze, pretty much do whatever it is that you'd like to do at that point. Okay. Processing also reaches deep into the levels of data and reveals embedded items, extracts files from archives, and allows you to see all the nuances and all the details of the data that exists. And at the bottom are just some applications that are commonly used in our industry to achieve that. Okay, after processing, different applications give you the ability to analyze the data. And analysis is another way that you can search unstructured data. Okay? You can identify things like near duplicates. Maybe you run a keyword search, and it turns out that that document has 100 other documents that are almost 100% identical as far as the text reads with some small variation. That process is near duplicate detection. That's something that we employ very regularly. You can also use metadata as a result of processing to create email threads. Okay? Maybe you find a subject of interest or a keyword in an email with a subject of interest. You can then line up all the other emails in that conversation to begin to see the thread and see the communication back and forth. And with metadata or enhanced metadata, you can begin to generate relationship matrices. Okay? You can create a graphic, or you can start charting who's been talking to whom over what period of time, most often, and about what. Okay? None of that's really possible until you start getting into processing, extracting all the metadata from a collection effort. Okay? And here's some applications that help us with that. Ultimately, tackling unstructured data, finding what you're looking for in a corporate enterprise, really requires a multidiscipline, multi-tiered approach. There really is no magic bullet. There are applications that are really good at certain aspects of it, but to really take care of everything that you might need in answering the question at the beginning of finding all the potentially responsive documents over a particular time period, worked on by this business unit that potentially talk about these things. You need to have lots of things in mind. You need to have many tools in your toolbox, and you just need to be aware of the various issues and be able to cycle back on the process if you need to, based on what you find down the line. Okay. You can search a collection. Again, we talked about some of the pitfalls of that and things to be wary of. You can search at processing, and by searching we can mean identifying duplicates or suppressing system files. Right, the software is finding those things and suppressing them for you. And the most exhaustive search can be performed after processing occurs.